Hello everybody, Steve here. Welcome to our show. We're glad to have you with us. Today it's Katie and I, and we're going to talk to you about some of the different things that we think make families successful. We ask in our trailer and in our intro, what is something that makes a family successful, and how do you know if you're successful? Well, we're going to give you a lot of examples today in the three major categories of health, relationships, and family finances. So if you think about just a generic sort of definition for success, it's the attainment of a desired outcome. And for us, as a family, that might seem elusive, because how do you say, well, my family's arrived, we are now successful and forevermore will be? It doesn't work that way. It's not like a big goal, like when we put people on the moon years ago. You could say, well, there we go, we did it. We launched the rocket, they had the lander, it made it to the moon, it was successful, everybody came back safely, mission accomplished. That was a success. It's not like that for families, because families are in it for the long haul. It's years, it's decades, it's a lifetime of trying to maintain a level of success that is fulfilling for your family. So that's why I say it's a little bit elusive, in the sense that you can't just say, aha, we're successful and that's how we're going to be forevermore. It's something you have to continuously work on. Okay? So being successful means that you're consciously on a path to a desired outcome. I think that works better for families, because you're on that path and you never really get off of it. You might be in a really good place, but you're not likely to stay there forever. So, you fall off a little bit, you get back up, and it works like that. So Katie is going to talk to us about how we can get on that path and stay on it.
So for our family, in our experiences, and with many of the successful families that we've run across, we've discovered that systems actually allow you to be purposefully on the path to success. And it helps you to kind of measure where you're at and to gauge how are you doing, so that you're not always feeling like you're on a wheel and you're just running and you can't get off and you don't know where you're at. So we champion systems that families can use easily. We know that if it's not simple, it's not sustainable. So the systems that we've implemented in our own homes, that we've learned from others, the best, most successful systems are ones that can become a normal part of your daily life, your daily routine. They don't take that long to implement, and they bring you a great relief so that you can focus your time and energy in other areas. We define a system as a procedure that repeatedly can give you reliable results. So you want to be able to see those results and make them your norm, and it will bring you a sense of peace.
So the first one that we're going to start with, major categories, is the category of health. And when I'm talking about health, I'm talking about your mind, your body, and your spirit. So let's start with the mind. I would say that a person who would be defined as a successful person because of the state of their mind would be one who is capable of thinking logically. You're able to make good decisions. You're able to work through adversity. And here's one that's a little trickier. I call it future-based decisions. I remember when I showed up to my very first ship in the Navy, I was rather new as a commissioned officer, and I believe it was the commanding officer who told me that for a junior officer, he thinks it would be great if you're thinking just 2 weeks down the road. Now, for a ship, you got to think way down the road, because you have half a year that you might be in a training cycle, and then maybe you have a half a year deployment, and then you got to think about what's going to happen at the end of that deployment, what could happen on, all the different things that could go right, that could go wrong, all that type of stuff. So when I say future-based decisions, I'm talking about you have to be present in the now, but think about the impact of your decisions today on your family a year, 2 years, 10 years down the road. So a person who has a mind that is geared towards thinking logically, I think would be successful. Right. Capable of handling stress.
So being able to handle stress is not the same thing as being stress-free. And a lot of us have this idea that life really should be stress-free. That's what's shown to us in advertising and marketing all the time. That is sort of an ideal that many people we've run across have as their end goal, their ideal state. But it's not a reality for the majority of people. And that is,
Now, life doesn't work that way.
Exactly. So a really good way to know that you are successful when it comes to stress would be that you are able to work through the stress until it's resolved. For special needs families like ours, it's a long-term thing. We don't just suddenly get over the issues at hand. We have to deal with them and manage them potentially for a lifetime. But we can be successful when we know how to handle the stress while caring for ourselves and having an abundant life in the midst of that.
That's right. And another thing that really helps with that, the third point of being successful with your mind, I think, is having a growth versus a fixed mindset. And this terminology was, at least at one point, championed by Carol Dweck. You can find her book online. It's actually a good book, right? The difference between the growth versus fixed mindset, for example, a person with a growth mindset says, I can learn this when approached with a new challenge or difficulty, versus a person with a fixed mindset might say, well, I'm not smart enough. I'm just not made for this. And so you're not going to go anywhere with it. So you can apply that to almost anything. It could be business. It could be physical training. It could be learning a new skill or a new hobby, whatever it is. Having a growth mindset, I think, in general, is a more common trait among successful people than would be a fixed mindset.
Another aspect of health is taking care of our body. So we just discussed taking care of our mind, and now we need to talk about our bodies. We need to make sure that we are having proper nutrition, that we're eating whole foods, things that don't contain all the chemicals and all the processed foods that remove the nutrients. Our bodies need nutrients so that they can function and have all of the proper chemical reactions inside of our bodies to keep us happy. And for everybody, we each have a unique makeup. So it's really important that you can figure out your bio-individual nutrition needs, because your body will run differently than your spouse's body or your children's bodies. And so if you can learn how to tailor your nutrition to your own body, you can actually maximize your health and really enjoy being in your body. It's very important throughout the day to make sure you have proper hydration, to really take a look at your proper sleep. Are you looking at screens right up until bedtime? And if so, how is that impacting you? Or are you not allowing yourself the opportunity to relax before you go to sleep? Are you cutting yourself short because you're just feeling so overwhelmed and you have so much to do that you figure, well, you can cut out sleep instead of other things? It's really important to pay attention to it, and it's something most of us brush aside. The other thing with our bodies is that looking into your proper exercise. What does your body need so that it can create and have enough energy during the day and be strong for whatever is necessary in your daily tasks, in your daily life? So for your body, looking at your nutrition, your hydration, your sleep, and your exercise is a really comprehensive way to make sure that you're supporting yourself throughout each day.
Yeah. The last area of your health that I'm going to talk about is your spirit. Spirit, that's our vitality. Different religions will use the words spirit and soul interchangeably. I don't think they're supposed to be used interchangeably. The Bible tells us in 1 Corinthians 6:19 that our body is a temple of the Holy Spirit, right? I've heard someone say, and I don't remember where I heard the quote, that you are a spirit and you have a body. And a lot of people think about it perhaps in reverse, if they think about it at all that way. So when I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking about how do we deal with negative emotions, things like fear, anger, and sadness. And when I say negative, I'm using, you can't see it, but I'm using quotes around negative, because those emotions aren't necessarily negative just because they're pointing to things that are difficult, right? They're pointing to things that are difficult because those are things that need to be resolved. So in that sense, it's working in your favor as a flashing warning light, right? And so in the sense of a family, how does the family work together to get through those things? So if one person in the family is experiencing fear or anger, sadness, stress, and things like that, how's the rest of the family helping out? That's a good sign for the success of that family. Now, the second major category that we're going to talk about, I said we would do health, relationships, and family finances. So the second one is relationships. So let's talk about marriage. So this is a dad, this is a father speaking here. The first element of a good marriage is good communication. And that is important whether in the conversation you and your spouse are in agreement with one another or if you are having a disagreement. And, either one of those, it doesn't matter. You need to be able to communicate respectfully with one another. You need to be able to communicate lovingly with one another.
And it's important, too, to be willing to talk about the things that you don't agree on, but to do it in a respectful way. It's very important not to stuff those things down. Many people think it's better to avoid a disagreement than it is to discuss or have a disagreement. Disagreements are actually important and healthy to work through, and it can increase the strength of your bond as long as you manage it properly with proper communication.
Well said, dear. Well said. So the first element there was good communication. The second element that I'm going to highlight is having a servant's heart. You are married to the person that you love. And our relationship, that means that I am willing to serve my wife in any capacity that is necessary for her to have a joyful, healthy, fulfilling life. Okay? It could be in daily tasks. It could be in longer term things. It doesn't matter. I intend to have a servant's heart and to be a blessing to my wife. And then the last item there is date your spouse, right? The fun, the romance, the enjoyment of being married doesn't end on the day where you tie the knot and you place the rings on each other's fingers, right? I think it's important to date your spouse for life.
Yes, it's really very important. And through the stresses of life, that can really tap your energy and can cause you to some people will get disillusioned or just unfocused. Having that strong bond with your spouse can be much more difficult if you don't set aside the time to just have alone time to talk. And it doesn't have to be intricate. It doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be complicated. And these days with COVID, it doesn't even have to be outside of your home. We have always found creative ways to have dates and, simple things like having couch time. If you go to our Facebook page, you'll see we did a video there to explain that. Just 20 minutes every day at some point, right there in your family room or wherever you spend time as a family with your children there. But it's time for you and your spouse. And it's a wonderful thing for your whole family. So
the kids can be present there, but they don't participate. That's mom and dad time.
Yeah. And dating your spouse can be so creative and fun and just keep your just the excitement of your days. You never know what to expect, and we really recommend it. And it can be free, which is also a benefit.
Right, you are.
So we're going to talk about parenting for a minute, because this is another very important aspect in relationships. Our culture has had a tendency to make it look like children, there's that old saying, they should be seen and not heard, for example, or that they're an inconvenience in some way, or there's a general sense that children should not be respected. And we want to say that, in fact, the opposite is true. We should be loving our children, and love means that we do respect them. We do lead them, but we respect them in that. And we use a love language. You can figure out, there's a wonderful book called The 5 Love Languages. And if you pick it up, there's one specific for children too. Go through it. It'll help you identify the ways that your child receives and understands love more quickly. So even when you're having a very stressed time and season of your life, if you understand your children's love languages, you can really boost your children's sense of how much you love them in a very efficient and effective way that really speaks to their heart. And it creates that deep bond and that attachment that's so necessary. And in our world today, there's so much opportunity for us to be pulled apart and not to have time. We're involved with technology these days that becomes more and more demanding. Working hours are long. For those of us that are able to return back to any form of activities, even activities really pull families from being able to really connect with each other. But our children need that attachment with us so, so much.
The second part of that under parenting is leading your children, and this is being intentional in what you say and what you do in the presence of your children, because they are going to learn from your example. How does that saying go? It's what's caught, not taught, or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So that's pretty close to it. So you get the point there. They are there in your presence all the time, and that's great. So be mindful of how you conduct yourself. Be mindful of your demeanor, your manners, your speech, how you treat your spouse, all of these different things, because they're watching and they're learning from you.
They will do what you do. They will not necessarily do what you say. So another thing we want to talk about really quick is teaching your children. What will make them successful adults? We would love for most parents that we've run into would love for their children to become responsible, to become independent, to become capable, and especially it's important for our children to become compassionate people, because even if they grow up and they are wildly successful in business and very wealthy and, have the world at their fingertips, if they're not compassionate, then really there is so much missing in their life.
So really, what good is it to add a person out into the world who is stingy or bitter or cruel, right? Yeah. They could be wildly successful. They could be capable of doing anything that they want to do. But if they're a cruel person or anything like that, if they have no compassion for those who are different. Now, we speak as special needs families quite a lot, and so you can kind of see where I'm coming from in the sense that a person being treated differently because they appear differently or anything like that would be highly inappropriate.
Yeah, so teach your children to be compassionate, and it will increase the goodness in the world, and it's very important. And another aspect of teaching our children is to consider what would make them a good spouse and parent someday, and to have systems in place for you to help model that to them.
Okay, and so now under the family relationships, the last major category will be siblings, right? Let's talk about your children. Do they love one another? Are your children friends with one another? How did they treat one another? Are they helpful to one another? Are they compassionate? Are they kind? Those sorts of things. The interaction between your children is very important, right? Because those will be lasting bonds and lifelong relationships. They will outlast our lives here on earth, right? Let's set them up for success. Katie, why don't you tell them about communication?
So, with siblings, it's important to make sure that they communicate. There's this general idea that siblings are going to fight and that's just normal. Sure, kids do get into tussles. They don't understand how to have conflict resolution. That is not something we're born with. It's a skill that's taught. And so to help them be successful in their relationships, look and see, how do they communicate? Are they looking for the intent that one another has towards them or that they have towards their siblings? Are they interested in their sibling or in a relationship with their sibling? And how can you help model that for them and help encourage them there? When they're hurt from one another's, hurt feelings or accidentally bumped into one another, how do they communicate communicate that to one another, and how do they resolve that situation? There are simple systems that can really help children to work through that model for them in their future. Great ways to resolve conflict. And then to just look at their gratitude. Are they grateful for one another, for the relationships that they have? This is something that is oftentimes a taught skill as well. Children don't necessarily immediately think of each other. And so it's important to help to encourage them to communicate the gratitude that they do have for one another, which will increase their feelings of gratitude.
That's correct. And now the last of the three major categories is family finances. And in this, I have three things that I would say make for successful family finances, and that is, 1, they're stable; 2, they're sufficient; and 3, they are sure. So let's start with stable. I'm talking about your income as a family versus your outgo. I had to look up that word to make sure it was real. And it is. It's a real word. So your income, is it in excess of your outgo? Meaning you're not spending everything that you bring in through the door. That will greatly influence how your family gets by on a week-to-week sort of basis. And everyone knows that finances are one of the hot spots and one of the worst triggers for divorce, at least in the United States. And so, is the income in excess of your outgo? Are you managing your expenses?
Yeah, it's really important for the husband and wife to come together and to really spend a good amount of time coming to an agreement, and to do so in a partnership way, to not look at the other person as their enemy, but to look at this as a team that you're pulling together. And each person may have different ideas. You may not come to the table with the same priorities or the same desires, and that's okay. And that can make for a better plan for your family. And it's a matter of using respect, using communication, and using the serving of one another with a kind and loving heart, remembering the intent of your spouse while you work out those details, and taking the time to do it, to come to an agreement, and it will strengthen your bond as a couple.
And the simplest way to come to agreement is to have a budget. I remember when I was in my MBA program, that's one of the first things we learned. I think it was in an economics class. It was that it was defense financing. Imagine that. It was defense finance, and it had to do with a budget being a written plan. So the budget in our country, in the United States, is probably thousands of pages long. It's a written plan, and everyone, in a sense, agrees to it. Now, do they stick to it? That's a different question, right? But for a family, it's easy to do. It's a spreadsheet. It's a single sheet of paper where you are tracking your income versus your known expenses on a monthly basis. And you agree to it, and you agree to stick to it. That's your budget. It's simple. So that's financial stability. Let's talk about sufficiency. Is the income sufficient? Does it meet your family's needs? Is everybody well fed? Can you pay for the utilities? Can you pay for your rent or your mortgage? Those types of things. Is it sufficient for your basic needs? Have you built in a reserve so that if the car needs maintenance, you're not taking it out of your monthly budget, for say, you're getting it from a savings account or something that allows you to do that? And do you plan for your future expenses? If you know that the refrigerator is on its way out, do you save in advance for that? Are you planning for that expense? You know it's coming and it's going to be sizable. Can you prepare for it in advance so that you're not hurt by it financially when it comes? And then the last element of family finances is surety, right? Will you have sufficient funds in retirement after your working years have passed? There are numerous ways to do this, and I'm not here to say one is any better than the other at this point. I'm just going to list them out. There's investing, right, in the stock market and things like that. There's savings, on a monthly basis in an account. And then there's some cash flow type investing that you can do so that you have passive income, say rental properties and stuff like that. So family finances, are they stable? Are they sufficient? And are they sure? If you get all three of those, I think that's successful.
So each of these areas, when it comes to health and relationships and family finances, have simple systems that you can really easily implement into your home one at a time, and that you will notice can really significantly reduce your stress level, become routine, become things that make peace, that increase your bonds, and that really help you function in your home. You'd be surprised to know that we all have systems, and many people don't even realize that they have them. And many times the systems don't serve them well. So a simple tweak in something that you're doing already as a system to make it an effective system that actually promotes wellness in your life is something it can be very, very significant in your life and your joy. And so we hope that you will take a minute to analyze, what systems do you have that you don't even recognize you're using?
That's correct. And if you have those systems and you notice that they aren't working for you, that ties back to what we said at the very beginning, in that it is a system, yes, but it's not a successful one. It is not putting you on the path to get to your desired outcome. And if you see that what you're doing is not going to get you there, stop what you're doing, figure out what you can do differently, and give that a shot. All right? It doesn't have to be immediate and overnight success, but it needs to tend toward success so that you're getting there. That's the point. So that's a wrap up for today. I think that's everything that we wanted to give to you so that you could see how we sort of think about and define family success when it comes to your health, your relationships within your family, and your family finances.
So we wanted to let you guys know we also have a Facebook page where we would love to interact with you. So if you look us up by the name of the podcast, Family Success Secrets, on Facebook, you'll find us there. And we have all kinds of videos there that will be sharing more information. And so we'd love to see you. You can send us messages there too. And we love your feedback. And if you have ideas for topics you'd like to hear more about, or interesting people you'd love for us to interview, go ahead and send us a message. We'd really enjoy hearing from you.
Yeah, so let us know about those kinds of things. Let us know what you like about the show, right? So you can find us there on Apple Podcasts, and you can download and leave a rating and review there, and we'll be able to pick up on that as well. So thanks for being with us today. It's been a pleasure to give you some insight to this oversight. And of course, as the weeks progress, we're going to hit each of these things in greater detail, Katie and I, and the guests that we bring on. And then eventually we'll get around to having some coursework and some things that will allow us to have a very immersive experience together, learning these things in greater detail.
All right, everyone, have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next week.
So long for now.